Finally getting his turn with the Tuneup Treatment, it is the Medarot 5 Stag Beetle starter, KWG0C Shinzan, regraded with a kit of Radar Sight, Sword, Pile, Biped Legs, and the leg ability of Straight, which passively buffs the heat stat of equipped melee parts just by having the leg equipped on the field. Now when it comes to overall and conventional balance as a melee fighter, Shinzan is definitely a cut above the rest when it comes to most others of his family, where even if they specialize in, say, higher damage from, say, Luminous Stag, or have meta change forms such as Sonic Stag or Dorcas, Shinzan kind of takes that and throws it out the window, focusing instead on being an all-around balanced traditional and conventional model. Radar Sight is a support-based skill that, when used, will buff success across the board from himself and his allies by 30%, which again, success is your likelihood of landing hits, as well as your likelihood of landing critical hits. But not only in addition to this, Radar Sight will also remove any stealth or conceal effects of the enemy side as long as the buff is active, which means anyone that is using, say, Conceal, Stealth, or even Hide Blow is no longer able to hide or minimize damage once Radar Sight is active. Right Arm of Sword is a conventional and well-rounded and pretty modestly balanced conventional melee skill that you can never ever go wrong with using anywhere. For its incredible balance, good stats, and very consistent overall performance, it's a skill you can never be sorry using. Left Arm of Pile is a deviant essentially from the standard KWG norm of using Hammer, but in contrast, Pile is another conventional melee-based skill that, instead of it being an AoE, has pierce damage natively. And in addition to this, when you fully cap the part at 5-star, will also gain a stack of Defense Ignore, which means you will not only have a consistent form of melee damage, sometimes and arguably even better than Sword in some cases, you'll also get one that's ignoring a percentage of enemy resistance when damaging the opponent. Biped Legs do also give Shinzan pretty modest coverage across all terrains pretty well, and his stats are kind of in that nice little sweet spot too, nothing overly high or super broken or even super low, so he's kind of in that really nice sweet spot where even as a pure set or as mixed, he's one you really can't ever go wrong with using anywhere. And with his arms and head focusing especially with an emphasis on success, which is likelihood of hits and crits, the leg ability honestly compounds this even more, which means it'll be a blue moon whenever Shinzan ends up missing an opponent, whether than by outright dodging the blow or even just grazing it. Now when it comes to the tune-up skill, Shinzan kind of chose to take what he already has packing and kind of expound on it to make himself even better for it. In this case, his head has access to tune-up features such as plus 100 to heat, plus 50 to cool, and super radar sight, which grants a plus 100% additional bonus to success once the buff is active. Now this is a fantastic buff for a number of reasons. First of which is the buff by itself is only giving you a 30% bonus, which is modest, but not decently noticeable, but still something that you can kind of sleep on depending on how you use it. But 130% buff to that, which again, once more, likelihood of landing hits and landing crits, it'd honestly be rare if anyone would be missing a blow, let alone it'd be honestly hard to come up with an excuse for any blow once that's active to not be a critical hit on top of that one. So that buff alone is already going to be very, very much so worth the investment. The heat and cool, honestly, you could go either direction based on how you want to use Shinzan in this case, so I'll kind of leave that up to your own personal discretion. Right Arm of Sword has access to plus 200 to armor, plus heat cool 50% to each, or plus 50 to each, and damage plus, which will give a 30% damage bonus when piercing damage and breaking parts. Now the pierce damage alone already speaks for itself over how useful it is, especially as a well-rounded part as it is. The heat and cool, you really shouldn't have to worry about too much, given the fact that the 50 is going to be very negligible at best, and not really well worth the investment in my personal opinion. That being said, the pierce damage bonus and the armor at plus 200 will definitely give Shinzan that much, even just a little bit higher survivability than he had before, as someone who can be very versatile on the field as a well-rounded melee fighter. Left Arm of Pile has access to plus 150 to power, plus 200 to heat, and damage, and also has a damage plus ability, which will give a 25% damage bonus when piercing damage, again when breaking parts and having carryover. But already alone, that damage plus speaks for itself over how useful it will be and how recommended it is for Shinzan to make use of that bonus. In terms of the other two bonuses between heat and power, Personally, you could honestly go either direction, go for extra base power with that, with the 150, or go plus 200 with the heat. Personally, the reason I went with the heat stat over power is because even this pile by itself as a well-rounded attack really doesn't have to be stronger than it really doesn't have to be much stronger than it already is, because it's already packing a lot of skills to make itself even better in combat. Whereas plus 200 to heat is going to be absolutely noticeable, which means Shinzan will be running much, much faster to the line when using this skill and making it easier for him to score pot shots. His legs have access to the most bonuses, and some pretty solid ones at that too. Plus 300 to armor, plus 300 to shoot resist, plus 100 to mobility. The straight leg ability has plus 100 additional bonus to success, and of course S rank on prairie terrains. Now, to be completely honest, aside from the bonus to straight, which is pretty much a given his kit as a very, very big emphasis on likelihood of landing hits and crits, honestly, his leg stats, you could go a lot of different directions too, depending on how you want to use him. Plus 100 to mobility is honestly really, really nice, and you will notice that change on the field for sure. But it's still moderately negligible, especially in high-end meta where every point of speed counts if you want to ensure that you get that last hit in. But if you decide not to focus on speed, armor or shoot resist you could probably do pretty equally across the board. Armor if you want higher base HP, shoot resist if you want better damage reduction. But honestly, S rank on terrain, much like any other biped leg, you could very easily ignore that one too, since you're not really going to be using it, and that extra 10% bonus that it would give really doesn't justify spending the points for it. Now originally, I had Shinzan graded as a pure set and mixed parts across the board at a very flat 7, because he was utterly fantastic for an all-around and conventional melee fighter, with no major drawback or weakness, no fallback skill or flaw in his design or his kit. He's honestly someone you can very easily use anywhere, especially as a melee fighter, and very reliably use him as that dedicated fighter. Even if you choose not to use him as your dedicated melee nuker, he still has a lot of skills across the board that make him very reliable. However, factoring in his new tune-up skills, I do honestly have to grade him higher now at an 8 out of 10 for his pure set score and an 8.5 out of 10 for his mixed parts score, given that even if he doesn't have a lot of noticeable change with his stats at base, it's that bonus to success that's really going to come through. And honestly, given the fact that his head radar sight is non-heavy, I definitely wouldn't be surprised if once that buff does go active for him with the super success, you'd be seeing it a lot more on, say, competitive teams to guarantee that all hits land and all hits are also critical.